Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols to be observed. Will we be able to show the few slides that I had? Sorry, just a minute. Okay, whilst they are working on that, so MC, thank you for the elaborate introduction. So yes, I am a professional environmental engineer, and I deem it an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to be talking to youth and also, I'll say, leaders, current leaders, future leaders in this auditorium. And I'll say that, this is a great opportunity because some of the things that I talk in my bedroom, this is the time that I have to share it with every one of you here so that together we can develop Ghana. Okay. Next slide. So, the theme for this conference is Uniting to Build Ghana. And I have a question for you. Sorry, I'm not doing this by myself. We are doing it together. Okay, we are presenting together. So I'll need some feedback. What is your vision of a developed country? When you think of a developed country, what comes to your mind? Because we need to have a good picture, right? And then we work towards it. Do you agree? Yes. So any idea? Anybody wants to volunteer? If you think of the future of Ghana, what comes to your mind? Any volunteer? Yes. Thank you. Clean environment, absolutely. And unfortunately, when you listen to the discourse that goes on about developing Ghana or some of the key areas that I'll say the conversation center on, you hear economy, right? You hear infrastructure. Barely do you hear serious discussions on environmental issues. Will you agree? But today I want to use the opportunity to, I'll say that, help all of us here to understand the link between the environment and even the things that we talk about. Because I think as an environmental person, I see how we spend a lot of time talking about the symptoms and not paying attention to the underlying factors, okay? And as leaders and future leaders, if we understand how things are linked, then when we are thinking of the ideas and the solutions, we are not thinking of solutions that will treat symptoms, but solutions that are actually addressing the issues at the roots. Okay? So, next slide. So, why should we center or focus environmental stewardship at the heart of our development? One, it has a direct impact on health. How many of you have had, I know that when I ask or when we discuss how environmental issues affect health, most of you will be aware of how waterborne diseases, spread and how people can get sick if the environment is dirty and all of that. But last December, I had a very interesting conversation with a medical doctor in the US. I had a surgery and it was a major surgery. And guess what? I was told that I'll only spend a night in the hospital and be discharged the next day. In my mind, I was like, this is a major surgery. Why would you discharge me just a night? I want to stay here for a little while to make sure that everything is okay. But the doctor insisted just one night is good. So I went home and then this medical doctor friend came and we were talking. And she said, Juliet, do you know why in the United States, the length of stay in the hospitals is shorter than other areas like Ghana? I was like, no. She said, because of the less possibility of infection. So in Ghana or in other African countries where the environment is bad, if you are released a day after your surgery, chances that you have an infection is high. So those of you, I'm sure everybody might have had an uncle, an auntie, a parent who probably was denied a bed or admission at the hospital because there was lack of beds, right? lack of beds is because someone has to stay at the hospital for a longer time. Because if the person is discharged early, there is a possibility of infection. So when you are thinking of development, when we are thinking of uniting, coming together to develop Ghana or to build Ghana, do not think of improving health infrastructure as just expanding hospitals and building a lot of hospitals and giving access to people, but also understanding that whilst you increase certain number of hospitals, you also need to invest in environmental sanitation, so that instead of building 2 hospitals, you can probably build 1, improve sanitation, and people will not need to stay in the hospital for long. Are we on the same page? So as future leaders, that is the understanding I want you to have. That is the education I want you to have. And as an environmental engineer, I believe that's my responsibility to educate and to, expose you to some of these facts, so that we will not repeat, the current system that we have, where we are only treating symptoms, but we treat issues. We develop solutions for the underlying problems. Okay. And there is also an impact on the economy, and I believe that most of you will be aware now. Currently, with the state of land degradation, it's estimated that we are losing close to $54 billion in just recent years alone due to land degradation. And another effect of land degradation is food insecurity. So now when you go to the market and food prices are high, don't just think that, oh, the economy is so bad, the government is so bad. Food prices are also high because there are fewer lands available to grow, because most of the lands have been degraded due to all sort of issues. And so if you think of demand and supply, there is a lot of demand for food products, but there is not enough production. So that is going to increase prices. Okay. So if there is anything you take from here, it should be the desire to understand issues at the roots and develop solutions to address the roots. Okay. And then the last one is increased inequality. We don't center environmental stewardship at the heart of our development, then we are going to widen the gap between the poor and the rich. Because when you are poor, not only will you not have access to food and basic things, but then you're also going to be in the more polluted areas, and that is going to mean that you're going to be more likely to fall sick, and the cycle is going to go on and on. And I needed to bring this up because one of AGY's mission is to eradicate poverty, and I want us to understand some of these things, so that we are thinking of eradicating poverty, then we should also center environmental stewardship in some of our systems. Okay. In the next slide, I'll not go so much into our problems. We already know the environmental issues that are affecting the country as at now. I'll only just talk a little bit about Galamsey, just because it impacts a lot of things. Okay, our health, food, etc. But one key thing that I want you to know is that if you're in Accra, one thing I've realized is, people in Accra think Galamsey is, in the Ashanti region and the Western region. It doesn't concern anybody here. But it's affecting the cost of your food, and it's affecting the quality of your food. It's going to affect your access to water. Currently, a lot of farmers are crying because they can't, they don't have good we don't have good pattern of rainfall. So irrigation is a big problem. It's a big thing that we need to invest in. But if we are destroying all the rivers, what are you going to use to irrigate the food crops that you have? Just think about it. Next slide. As I said, I will not dwell so much on the problems, but I want to leave you with solutions. And I think as a country, we are at a very good spot, because there are people who have done this many years ahead of us. We have a lot of developed countries to learn from. We are now developing. We don't need to repeat mistakes. We don't need to even reinvent the wheel. all we need to know, all we need to do is to learn and think of solutions that we can bring here to to help our issues. I use this opportunity to highlight the opportunity to learn from history. So in the United States, if currently you see clean waterways, clean rivers in the United States, it didn't happen by chance. Something happened. When US was, in the industrialization stage, when people want to make business, people want to produce things, right? Nobody was thinking about the environment, so they were just polluting the rivers, they were discharging waste into the rivers and all of that. So most rivers in the US at some point were all polluted. This was in, let's say, within 50 years. Now, what triggered US to act was this river right here, the river Cuyahoga River in Cleveland, Ohio. What happened? Most of the industries in Ohio were just polluting the river. And one day, just a spark of fire fell in the river, and the river caught fire. You can Google it. The burning river. Big river that caught fire because it had a lot of petroleum, discharged into it, a lot of oil and all of that stuff. So that really, angered a lot of activists to say that, hey, we need to do something. And then US decided to have what we call the Clean Water Act in 1972. And they decided that we are going to be stewards of our waterways. We are going to bring together policymakers, scientists, engineers, technologists, and we are going to develop solutions to treat our waterways. And 50 years later, the river is clean and people can, they can use it for tourism and people can play in it. And what that also means is that 50 years, how many of you have an uncle who is 60, 70 years, or a parent who is, 60, 70 years? I'm sure many of you do, right? That means that in a lifetime. So do not lose hope. With all the issues we are having with Galamsey and all of that environmental issues, I'm using this as an example for you to know that it can be done in a lifetime. All we need is the will. And remember, they brought together policymakers, engineers, technologists, right, scientists. So we need everybody's contribution. And so when you're thinking of the solutions, you need to think of, okay, who can you bring on board? History is there for us to learn. This is a good example that we can look at to develop solutions that will suit our current situations. The next slide. And I also want to highlight additional opportunities. Beside cleaning rivers, there is also a lot of opportunities in the environmental space. The environmental industry, or even just waste management alone, is a multi-billion-dollar business. Okay, so we need the next just spawns in this room. And so when you're thinking of businesses, do not just think of real estate, because I think right now everybody is thinking of real estate as a means to make money, but we can make a lot of money from waste as well. This fertilizer you see here on the left, it is called Music City Gold, and it is organic fertilizer. We as a country currently do not generate organic fertilizer from our human waste. But imagine, we are thinking of a resource that we can use all the time. Who knows when human beings are going to stop pooping? Excuse me. We are always going to poop. So long as we eat, we will poop. And we have to take care of it. Instead of disposing it somewhere, we can convert it into a usable organic fertilizer. This is done. This is not theory. This is my client, City of Nashville, the capital of Tennessee. They produce this organic fertilizer called Music City Gold that is sold to farmers and it's used in backyard gardens, wherever. So ideas, solutions for our problems, we have examples to learn from. Plastic waste, I will not go into it. There are a lot of innovations in that space, but this is your time to think. This is your time to read. This is your time to learn from history so that together we can develop solutions for our country. And I want to give a shout out to Bus Stop Boys because I've been following the great job that they've been doing. It's not everyone who has to do business. Some people have to volunteer. If you're here, if we want to develop Kana, we need volunteers. And these guys are showing very true patriotism that, gives me goosebumps whenever I see their work. And so if anybody here knows Bus Stop Boys, just tell them that we really acknowledge all the work that they are doing. And we hope that more Ghanaians will even learn. We hope that more Ghanaians will even learn from what they are doing. And imagine if we had 10 Bus Stop Boys. Imagine the impact that it will have on our environment. And not only do we need the volunteers, we also need people who provide service. So even the things that Bus Stop does, another group can also come together to offer that service, maybe at a fee. That is also a business idea, and that is something that we need. So in conclusion, I would like to say that, of course, we want to develop, sure, but we don't just want to develop without thinking of sustainable ways of developing. We need to center environmental, sanitation in everything that we think of doing. It has business opportunities. It also has a lot of implications that helps us understand our problems at the roots so that we can develop solutions for the root causes. Thank you very much.